I got to start. I've got to begin. And that is that. So, hey, everybody. Hey. I got to go on and get this thing started. Oh. Okay. Okay, let me do that. Okay, we're coming up. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. And we're going to come up in 15 seconds. 5. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio. It's the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. Hello, everybody. Sending you all so much love. I want you all to log in, thumbs up, help us with the algorithm. And please like and share the show. We've got a lot to talk about today. Minneapolis is front of mind for everybody. Why Minneapolis? Why now? What does all of this mean? Indeed, Rainbow Push went up to Minneapolis on the ground, as Reverend Jackson would want us to do. Oh my goodness, he so desperately wanted to be there. And, I can just tell you, it was something wonderful. We're going to go back. And indeed, because they are going into their, wait a minute, you know what? Let me do this again. Because I sent this to her. Let me let her know. Okay, hold, because I can't. It's just too much to do this, because I'm doing this myself. And okay, because that's just distracting. Okay. And let me let her know. And this is sent again. Okay. All right. On. Okay. So I'm just going to go on and get started because I have gone and I've started with her. We're going to start in 15 seconds and get this going. So I've sent this to her twice. Okay. All right. And 3. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. We've got a lot to talk about. Minneapolis, my home station's home, is at the center of the world right now. ICE, Alex Pretty, Renee Good, George Floyd is still in everyone's minds. Tom Homan, the border czar, had to go to Minneapolis this week because tensions are running so high. They had to remove Commander Greg Levino. They had to do it. And he called it a drawdown. He said, we're not surrendering, but there is a drawdown. But what they did not mention was that they're going to proceed with warrantless arrests. So they can just walk in and arrest you with no warrant. You don't even know why. And these arrests are not confined to immigrant communities. It's people of color. We see white people getting shot and killed right before our very eyes. What is happening? Well, I think now everybody is beginning to get an understanding of something that Black people have understood all along. Just what the threat of the police state, what it means, because that's what we're living in. The threat to our Constitution, the threat to our liberties and civil rights and civil liberties. There is so much that is at stake here, that is being threatened, that's being shredded, and people want to know what it is that they can do. Well, you can vote about it. We are now in the 2026 season. The primary season for Minneapolis, in fact, begins in about 2 or 3 weeks. And what's interesting about Minnesota is that it has the highest percentage of voters in the country. It's the most active state. The Somali community votes at a rate of 97%. And it is also the state in the United States that is known for having the most integrous election system, the one that is most unimpeachable. And yet now all of that is under threat because one of the communities, a community that is not outvoted, indeed, they over-index in the vote because they voted such a high rate. Well, will they turn out? Will immigrants who are newly minted, who are American citizens, but who are afraid of getting kidnapped, essentially, will they show up to the polls? What's going to happen? We are now seeing people who are armed and they're protecting their blocks, their neighborhoods. Rainbow Push went there because the Saturday Morning Forum, which is a church service that has elements of a political rally, because indeed Jesus was a political figure. Well, we've been doing that for 60 years. Reverend Jackson started the Saturday Morning Forum when he was a student, a seminarian at the University of Chicago. And I remember as a little girl going, the staple singers would be there, business persons would be there, people from Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, his home church, would be there, and other churches would be there. And then we moved on, and it grew and grew and grew and grew into the iconic meeting, the Saturday morning meeting that we have every day. It's on the Word Network. On Saturdays, it's on the Facebook. You can go on Facebook and go to rainbowpush.org. It's being streamed, and I want you to share it. Well, now we're going to be going back because it is election time. We're going to welcome Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson to this discussion of Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. You went up there with your son. Indeed, he has been acknowledged, is it by Time Magazine, as one of our great leaders of the future. We're so excited.
Yeah, one of Time 100.
Absolutely, so excited about him and his leadership. But of course, that came from you, and we've got Reverend Jeanette Wilson joining us today. And of course, she is the head of Push Excel, but she's been an advisor to Reverend Jackson at the Rainbow for more than 40 years. And so what we're going to do is get her centered in the camera. We need you to come to, there you go. There you go. And let's talk about what it is that you saw, because there is an untold story. Of course, we're looking at Georgia Fort and Don Lemon, who were arrested doing their jobs, but there were 4 other people who were arrested, including a former president of the NAACP, Attorney Nakima Levy Armstrong. What do you think about having a protest in the church? Some people would say Jesus overturned the tables in the temple when when God's work was not being done. Other people are saying, you know what, when I go to church, I just want to worship. But what you can't object to is what Don Lemon and Georgia Fort were doing. They were not in there advocating. They were reporting on what was happening in the church. We bring cameras into church services all the time so you can hear what the cardinal is saying. We televise the Pope's messages every week. So what do you think about that? What do you think? I want you all to reach out to me. Let me know what your thoughts are, Morning Stars. Hello, Bob Israel. How you doing? Somalians vote, 97%, I understand. Bob Israel, how you doing, sweetie? And Glenda Smith, how you doing? And so I'm just sending all of Michelle Hurley, girl, love you so much. Our beloved Michelle, one of our push babies. Well, she is a grown woman now with a son who is, well, didn't take much to be taller than Michelle Hurley, huh? Reverend Dr. Wilson. But she is a powerhouse. We love Michelle Hurley. Love her and can't wait to see her. Maybe she and her family can join us up in Minneapolis when we go back in a few weeks. But what I wanted to do with you and Reverend Hatch today, and I'm going to be talking with different people from Minneapolis throughout the week, because this is the progressive talk radio station in the state. AM 950 radio is the voice of progressive Minnesota. There are fewer than 10 pure progressive talk radio stations in the United States, and this is one of them. And so we're grateful to them for providing this platform. Of course, we do morning drive there every day of the week, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. But we pre-tape here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. So everybody, please like and share the show. And Daniel McGee is sending you so much love, Pastor Hatch. And let's talk about this, because what we're not seeing, we saw in passing, Zach Roberts, who has been the production partner for Greg Palast for years, who co-produced The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, that documentary, and Vigilantes Inc. He also gave us the iconic images as a photojournalist that came out of Charlottesville. But he was reporting on behalf of Status Quo News a couple of weeks ago. And you saw images, you heard stories that you don't hear in corporate media, Reverend Hatch and Reverend Wilson. You saw in passing people holding guns, protecting their neighborhoods. And you walked up to them and asked them what it is that they were doing. They said, I'm protecting my neighborhood. I'm protecting my block. Remote learning. A lot of people, not just immigrant children, are doing remote learning. They're afraid to go to school. This has impacted people who have just continued to go to school. They're afraid for their friends. And what about young Liam, who has just been released with his father from detention in Texas, who was being traumatized? Congressman Castro brought him back to Minnesota just today, and we thank God for that. We hope that that baby, this 5-year-old child, will get the support that this child needs, and so many others. So let me start with you, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson. The genesis of this trip is what? Why did you decide? Why did Rainbow Push decide to go? Aside from the fact that Reverend wanted us to go, because he is so upset that he could not be up there with you.
Well, we've always responded in the moment. And this moment, as we were watching the news, we kept listening when the young lady was murdered, and then the young man, 2 white people, white female, white male. It took us all the way back to Selma. Mm-hmm. It took us back to when Viola Uzo and James Reed, Reverend James Reed, murdered for no reason. Murdered because they believed in fairness. They believed in justice. They believed in the Constitution. They did not believe that we should have a dictatorship. And so we were in a meeting, and we had very short time frame. We said we got to go now, just to see what we've not heard. You never saw any of the individual citizens talking. You didn't see any clergy speaking. You heard from the Minnesota Attorney General, but we had not heard from an educator. We hadn't heard from any parents. We hadn't heard from any faith leaders in Milwaukee on the news, the broadcast news. And so we said, let's go to Minneapolis. And we just took a few of us to have a listening tour. Reverend Hatch was one of them. We had a small core of staff members, and we invited other faith leaders, members of PUSH, to join us as we went to investigate what's going on, so we could determine what it is we could do, if anything, to help. So we've had a couple of calls with Minneapolis faith leaders who said, please come. We need you. Reverend McAfee invited us to Minneapolis. We talked to Somali leadership. We spoke with AME pastoral leadership, Dr. Stacy Smith, Elder Stacy Smith. Mm-hmm. And we spoke with other faith leaders who were on the ground doing the work. And they said, please come and see, because they could not get the kind of coverage that they needed and the kind of assistance that they needed, because no one was talking to them. So when we got there the first night, we met at an AME church in the heart of where the young lady was murdered, very close to where the young man was murdered. Mm. And as we were listening to the members in that church, people came, and one was an educator. She was a union leader from the Teachers Union, National American Federation of Teachers. She was their state president, and she said the children are sorely damaged. So it was so horrific that the children had stopped coming to school. The parents stopped taking them because the fear of returning home with no parents, the fear of being detained and um, taken away if they left school, they left the school grounds just to walk home, the fear that they would never make it home. And if they did, there would be no one there to greet them. And plus, with the cuts to federal Title I dollars that provided free and reduced lunch, the educators and labor unions said, hey, we got to figure out a way to feed these children. We got to figure out a way to give them breakfast and lunch. And she said the social emotional trauma that the children were demonstrating, it made it even more difficult to deal with them in school. And so anyway, they went to the remote learning. And the high school students were so frustrated, they were beginning to stage resistance walkouts from class. And one grandmother said, I don't want my grandchild to participate. I'm afraid that she might not make it home. I'm afraid that they would detain or deport her, even though she's Black, because they were not distinguishing between children born in America and those that were not. The ICE terrorism was just unimaginable. And then we're in the church, and they said they can come into churches now. It's a public place. It's no longer a sanctuary. So now you have
but wait a minute. Hold on. If the church is now a public place,
yes,
then that begs later, just after we talk about that, how it is that they were able to arrest and charge Georgia Fort and Don Lemon if they were doing their job in a public place.
but that's a whole nother thing, and we do need to talk about that. But they're making the rules as they go along, and we must remember, ICE is not a legal entity. They are
What do you
not
mean?
they're not police. They're not any governmental body. These are people that are appointed at the will of the president and his administration. They're not legally constituted by Congress. They have no real training, nor do they have any arrest authority. But they're not even the border agents. These are some random people, similar to what Hitler did in Nazi Germany. You create your own military, and you pay them and you arm them. They are not the military.
But don't they sound like slave catchers?
They
I
are
mean,
very similar
you
to the
know,
slave catchers,
I mean,
and
because Nazi
to
Germany
the
learned from us,
they
right?
did, they
So,
did,
I mean, the slave catchers are the original gangsters, if you will, because that was the KKK.
and that's what
And
this is. That's
okay,
exactly what this is. They don't wear hoods. They wear black clothes and black masks. They're just not hooded, and they operate in daytime, not just at night.
did you see them when you were up there?
I did not see any ICE agents walking the streets because it's so cold in Minneapolis. They're not visible unless they become visible, if that makes any sense. They're not walking around except if they're in great numbers and there's a protest rally, you may see them. They move under cover of stealth and darkness. They respond when they see resistance, and you'll see them out on
Hmm.
the street, and they target certain situations. I think it has been they've been less visible since they've had to be pulled back somewhat.
Well, some people in social media in Minneapolis have said that what they're trying to do, they've gone stealth.
They are
That
still.
they're blending and they're even dressing differently, so you don't see the Kevlar as much. They are, but you can identify them by hats. But they are blending into the crowd. I mean, we saw that, of course, in the civil rights movement. You just began to know that when someone was telling you to burn down the house, that they were. Our experience began to show us that, oh no, this person's an informant because this is not
But
what we're trying to do here. So did you feel a heaviness in the atmosphere? In '92, I was in Los Angeles during the the lockdown because of the Rodney King riots. And I had been going to Los Angeles since I had been a child. I was no stranger to LA at all. Know my way around Los Angeles, the greater Los Angeles area, pretty well. But I got to the airport and I felt a stillness. And when I got in the city, it's like Reverend Hatch, Reverend Wilson, nobody was moving because people were a little anxious about moving. They were almost afraid to move because you had to be in by dusk. If you were in Beverly Hills or South Central, you had to be off the streets. And you did not move because the National Guard were in front of your hotel. I mean, and to see people with, military soldiers walking up and down the street, to see tanks go rolling down Crenshaw. But now, I mean, they are they are actually wrecking people's cars, Reverend Wilson.
Yeah, see, these people are not moving as if they're military. They're moving, as you say, as if they're slave catchers, and they are very different. And what we found out, they in Minneapolis have figured out how to resist. They have rapid response teams. They have a way of communicating the license plates of ICE. They know when ICE is in a particular area. They know, and then they alert other people. Meanwhile, the churches and several organizations are trying to cover the people, those who cannot go to the grocery store for fear of being deported. They have people that will deliver food. Mosque had been attacked by ICE. And so
What do you mean?
they would vandalize the mosque. They would threaten those who are going to worship. These are horrible people. They're almost demonic, if you will. Why would you bother people going for prayer? And so several of the non-Muslim faiths began, called as Project Isaiah. They decided that they would stand watch over the mosque to protect them. So you see faith leaders coming together in unusual ways, like never before, saying, no, whatever we call God, Allah, Hare Krishna, Buddha, one thing we do know, Jesus the Christ, our God is not one that would promote or project this kind of hostility and rage and fear on ordinary citizens. And so the faith community and communities, block by block, they're working together. It's the most amazing thing that I've ever seen.
Well, let me just take a pause to acknowledge Cliff Kelly. Cliff Kelly is watching us tonight, and I want to send Cliff Kelly so much love. He indeed is a legend in talk radio. He was based on the iconic WVON in Chicago, which is
Yes.
really it's just one of the top radio stations in the country, and we thank God for them and the work that they do. Indeed, I started my radio career, my local radio career, with WVON. That having been said, he would also do political analysis. You see him on the Superstation on WGN every local, state, and national election, because his political analysis is so keen. So I'm going to reach out and find out where Cliff is, because I would love to get. We need to hear his voice right now, because he's a lawyer, helped to write the state constitution for the state of Illinois, was an iconic alder here in Chicago, and he's got so much institutional knowledge. We don't want to let that go. But let me bring in Reverend Dr. Hatch as we catching him moving around. Carol Sanders makes this point. She says that moving, that's ICE, as if they have a quota with a payout. And we understand that they actually do have a quota. They have a certain number of people that they're supposed to catch every day.
Yeah.
Well, before Reverend Hatch jumps in, what is that? I mean, you're a lawyer, and you're a criminal defense lawyer. Help me to understand what is that?
They operate outside of our legal parameters. They have no authority to do what they're doing. This is really the system gone rogue. They're not conferred by any legislative body. They don't exist within our legal structure. We have National Guard, we have the armed forces, the various armed forces. We have police, state police, city police, county police. They don't fit in any of those categories. They're not they're not people that you would put over the defense of the country. These are people that are sent to cities, targeted democratic cities, to wreak havoc and to create fear. And when people are afraid, they behave in a certain kind of way. You can control them. You already have the media that's on lock, and Reverend Hatch can talk more to this. You frightened the faith community. Now your church worship services are being monitored, and you're a public place, so you can't say ICE can't come in here. They can come in your building. They're not to disrupt the service, but the very presence of ICE in a worship experience would be disruptive, would be concerning. It would create fear. You got men standing in black with guns who are not any police. No one asked for ICE to come and help them in Minneapolis or St. Paul or Chicago. They come to terrorize.
Well,
And
if you don't mind, I do want to bring Reverend Hatch in because ICE is still in Chicago,
mhm.
but they of course targeted certain areas. They didn't target Evanston. They didn't target affluent white neighborhoods or even middle class white neighborhoods. They targeted Latino neighborhoods, excuse me, and they targeted um, African American neighborhoods, right? And I think that's what really pushed the black community back on our haunches because he said, wait a minute, they actually did a raid, but you're now beginning to see that the raid was about uh, this building that they took out, which is a building that's in an area that used to be affluent, that fell into some disrepair. Now it's on its way back up because the Obama Library is just a couple of miles away. That they really wanted everybody out the building. So there's just a whole lot to this. But Reverend Hatch, you um, have been concerned that they would be deployed to vulnerable communities, and that is what happened in Chicago. What what did you see when you got to Minneapolis, and would you compare it to what you saw in Chicago or what you've been seeing? Because they're still here.
Yeah, Chicago's is a different context for this issue, just because we have a very progressive mayor, and it's so large.
Hmm.
And so I've been to Broadview a couple of times, and of course ICE has been dispatched primarily in communities where they can you know grab people off the street who they consider to be immigrants, and then basically wreak fear in those communities, not so much in black communities so far. What's happening in Minneapolis, of course, I mean, this is full-fledged occupation. Minneapolis is smaller, 600 police officers, 3,000 of these ICE and Border Patrol agents. That is by definition an occupation. So part of what is happening in Minneapolis is you have citizens who are neighbors, particularly of the Somali community, which has been demonized from the resolute desk. I mean, from the White House, from the Oval Office, as a people and as a community, and targeted from the top down. And you mentioned about the politics of it. It is a very influential vote, a very active political community, and so Reverend Wilson has already expressed these people are being terrorized. Their businesses are suffering because people are not coming out of the house. Uh, Food is being brought to them by their neighbors, and their neighbors are trying to protect them with whistles and other means, of an unarmed citizenry who is trying to literally protect their neighbors from being kidnapped and being deported or being detained. And so it is a city under siege very hard for us to wrap our brains around. I think Reverend Wilson has accurately described it as a extra legal military force. This is not constitutional at all. It's not legal, and it's not under any kind of jurisdiction of any of the the criminal justice system as we would define it, with people actually having the Bill of Rights as being enforced. And so this is very hard for the American people to understand. Nobody really announces and has a press conference and say, I am now an authoritarian dictator and this is an authoritarian regime. It happens before you know it. It has happened in America, and everybody's just trying to wrap their brain around. And Minneapolis is a epicenter now for this in the nation. And I think it was very, very helpful for Rainbow Push to come there this weekend, for us to shine the spotlight on this is every bit of a Selma moment or Birmingham moment or a Memphis moment. Minneapolis is an epicenter because it is really, not with hyperbole, but in fact, it's a city under occupation. When the occupiers have a armed force almost 4 times the police force.
No, wait.
It's under occupation.
Wait. What, they have 600 police officers and 3,000?
600 police and 3,000 plus ICE and border agents.
That's 5 times plus. But let me ask you this.
That's an occupation.
But help us to understand what that feels like, Reverend Hatch. When you went up there, what did it feel like? Because, we see flashes, right? We saw that the citizens decided to find out where ICE were, and they decided to take out the hotels. They were like, we want you out of here. And you saw the ICE agents looking out of the windows. I mean, they have not even, Jonathan Ross, who killed Renee Good, his neighbors thought he was a botanist. He lied to his neighbors. He didn't let them know that he's an ICE agent. This pastor, whose church Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were covering, he's an ICE agent. And you all are both ministers. You all have to help me to understand. I know a lot of pastors do have, until they have a church that can sustain them, they do have other jobs. But what do you think as a pastor? How do you reconcile being a pastor who's an ICE agent?
No. This is not just another job. These people were specifically recruited for this particular moment. They're paid more than the police officers get. They have less training than an ordinary police officer. This is not a job. This is a commitment to an ideology. The same thing you had when they have the Klan, as Reverend Hatcher said. This is clearly extrajudicial, extra legal. They have created an armed force to attack American citizens. They are arresting Native Americans. How do you tell a Native American, indigenous people, you have no rights? And the Native Americans said, we were here first. This is not anything that we can describe that makes any sense. When elected officials say, we're going to protect democracy, the average person doesn't know what that means. It means you have no rights. You have no right to speak freely in social media or off of social media. It means pastors have churches and they have to be guarded as to what they can say or do. Anyone can come into your sanctuary and threaten you, take you out because you're no longer a safe space, or take somebody out. You remember when we had Elian over at Reverend Slim Coleman's church? Mm-hmm. So long as she stayed in the building, she was safe. That's no longer the case. We have to now identify private spaces in faith institutions, so that if you have a migrant, someone from another country, they can only be in that space. Otherwise, they're vulnerable in the sanctuary, in the congregational spaces. They can be, ICE can just walk in and take somebody out according to them.
Well, what do you mean that pastors now have to watch what they're saying? Because we've been seeing that. We saw uh, the attempt to restrict, and it can happen in a very gentle, soft way with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Billy Graham, the great evangelist, right? The great boy who had segregated revivals, but he came around. Well, he had Dr.
Who
King
was quite
well, his record was quite mixed, right? And so what he did was he pulled Dr. King in to give the prayer at one of his great pilgrimages on the Mall in Washington. And he said, you know what? I can, if you would just leave civil rights alone, we can make you the biggest evangelist of this age. And to show you how that never stopped, they did that to Reverend too, my father. Just at several times in his life, and there's corporate church, right? That's where a lot of these churches that have tens of thousands of members and these ministries that are just unbelievably huge and generate tens of millions of dollars, they're sponsored,
absolutely.
right? But you know what? The reason I'm bringing that up, Reverend Dr. Wilson and Reverend Dr. Hatch, you all are ministers, but you're also very active in the community. And people don't know how this works. That's why I wanted to share that. They don't know how you can get pulled even in the church. I don't know why, because, Jesus came up against corporate church.
Especially in the church.
In the church.
Why do you say especially in the church, Reverend Dr. Hatch?
Because, the evangelical world is a world unto itself. I went to the prayer breakfast a couple of times in Washington, at the hotel up there near where Reagan was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And you must be invited.
Yes.
There are no printed invitations that go out. And then, of course, the network goes all the way up the power base of Capitol Hill. The publishing houses out of Grand Rapids and Colorado Springs. There's a whole economy that is evangelical, that if we can make Reverend Jeanette Wilson the new
Joyce Meyer,
Joyce Meyer, Beth Franklin, easily.
Paula White.
Of course she can't, she can't do all of this social justice talk and whatnot.
But wait a minute. On Joyce Meyer's website, I remember you could get registered to vote. I went on it like more than 20 years ago.
Yeah,
but
because
that's
of
not
who
social justice. They tell you
who
who
to
to vote for.
Yeah, it's who is going to be marketed to. Now, all of this is theological, which I think is very, very interesting. Your brother Yusef did a piece late last year on the 7 mountains theory of the industries and the parts of the economy and the universities that have to be infiltrated and reoriented in an evangelical theological ideology. This is a theological. So you would have a pastor who's an ICE policeman at the same time, because for many of these people, this is a theological argument they're having about taking their country back and their culture. There's blood and soil that has theological implications to it, which is the J.D. Vance, part of his narrative. And so this is very deep. And much of the discussion, which we've talked about before on your show, Santita, with people like Peter Thiel,
And
uh,
Elon
uh,
Musk and
Elon
Alex Carr.
Musk
Yeah.
and Yarvin. I mean, this is eschatological. This is apocalyptic. It's a very dangerous mix of religion and politics with no filters of reflection and humility to it, which is very dangerous.
And we've been here before. This is not the first time. And we all need to go back and reread Reconstruction by W.B. Du Bois.
Yeah.
Every time there's a level of progress made by people, there is always an equal and opposite move to take back the power that was gained.
There's a white lash.
White lash.
Yeah.
And that's what we're experiencing today. And they have been doing this throughout time. There was never a desire to treat us as people. We were not included in the original Constitution. In the minds of the framers, we were not even human. We were part of a human. The
But let
part
me
that
ask
could do
you
work
this.
and not
But
get paid.
but Reverend Dr. Wilson and Reverend Dr. Hatch. But unproperty that only applied. White women were not included.
Right.
White men who were not property were not included. Now, are we not beginning to really see that the only people who were included were the oligarchs?
And those are the people that are running things now. They have decided we don't need these people. And we have to look at this robotic revolution.
Mm-hmm.
They are replacing ordinary people who did ordinary jobs
Mm-hmm.
with these robots. And now
Oh,
they're
yeah.
programming them using AI in a way that they can function as if they were human. The only thing is they don't have real emotions. They don't have to have lunch, vacation, time off. And so there's this move by the oligarchs, not only to eliminate people, replace
Mm-hmm.
them with these robots. And you see it on who's scheduling your hotel reservations. You can't
Everything.
make them. I mean,
You
just
you
everything.
you can't touch it. But
And now,
Bernie
and what?
Sanders said there's 100 million jobs that he sees going. What
Oh
that's
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gone.
And they see human beings as essentially, a great percentage of the human beings on the planet as
A
obsolete.
burden. And
As
a
no
burden.
as no longer no longer necessary.
Hmm.
I mean, part of what makes it dangerous is you can tell when the oligarchs and the international elite are investing in bunkers,
Mm-hmm.
islands, and yachts. In other words, the unthinkable is now being contemplated, and that's nuclear conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
And where they can wait it out, as
they
they
think.
have some calculate, that there's actually going to be anything left worthwhile after which. I mean, we don't know because we've never had one, but this what makes it so dangerous, because we have these people whose thinking is illogical and whose hubris has literally driven them insane, and they are in charge of the economy and now the nuclear codes and the foreign policy. It is just a very dangerous time. And I think part of what we were trying to do in Minneapolis, and I think we do need to go back there again and again, as only probably Push could do, and that's try to make sure that we keep talking about nonviolent resistance,
Mm-hmm.
because we do not need to give the president an excuse to call for the insurrectionists, the act that will give him the ability to really cancel the midterm elections that he can't win legitimately,
Well, you
which is
see
again
this.
makes him dangerous.
Well, you
Well,
see what
that's
happened in Texas last night. Taylor Remick
Yes,
won. There's a 31-point swing.
yes,
The president won this district by 17 points. He won this seat but this primary, shall I say, by 14 points. That's a 31-point swing since last November. I mean, well, a year, a little more than a
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, help me to, because I think that one day I want us to drill down on AI, and there's a way to use AI in a way that can be helpful. But something that I've heard you, Reverend Dr. Hatch, and you, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, and may God rest, give Dwight McKee rest. It's that the God factor, right? And really, what are we doing here? See, Jeff Bezos said something, and we have to pay attention to what all of these people say. He said, part of what excites him about space exploration. And my mother said, you don't know what they have up there. I said, okay, because she said, much of the, they're going all the time. They're just not letting us know. She said, he said, one day visiting planet Earth will be like visiting Disney World. I said, so what does that mean? What do you all have planned for us that we'll be not here? Just, you got to help me to understand what it is that we're looking at, because the way they killed Renee Good and Alex Pretty let you know that human life has been devalued. I mean, when they went over to look at Alex Pretty's body, they looked at the bullet holes before they checked his pulse.
They were not trying to keep him alive. I think that the thing that we have to realize, there is a God factor. And that's the only thing that really keeps me motivated, because man has always tried to be God. It was biblical. They built the Tower of Babel. They've always wanted to be what their image of God is or was, so that they could change everything and rule the world. Well, that's not going to happen, but I think God expects us to have a better understanding of God. And if you understand God, then Jeff Bezos could not create a world. And that's what he's trying to do. And several of the people who are developing rockets and spaceships and AI, they want to be God. When I saw Elon Musk in the White House, he had no regard for any rules or anything, because he said, I have more money than anybody else. I have more power. I can send my own rockets up, so I don't need Cape Canaveral. I can do whatever I want to do. He felt like he was God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's
Mm-hmm.
a that's a, a bad state of mind to have. But I know a God that's bigger than him. And all God is expecting for us, I think America turned away from God. We have an undefined faith. You got these evangelicals that are off and running, thinking that they making decisions. They can buy the church. The church is not for sale. Somebody gave a life for the church. And it certainly wasn't any one of these evangelicals. And so once you believe that, all this stuff that they're doing is horrific, because they're evil. They don't believe in God. They believe in themselves as gods. I keep going back to Hitler, Nazi Germany. It's all a cycle. Apartheid in South Africa. When we marched against apartheid, did we really believe that Mandela would become president? Did we ever think apartheid would end in our lifetime? Many people didn't, but it did. Mandela comes
But the
out.
people, but it's interesting. The people of faith did, because, like, Reverend Jackson saw a new world. Dr. King saw a new world, and part of the really the divinity of their missions has been to help us to believe it. Because
You
we're
got to
but a thought
believe it.
away. You gotta believe it. What did he
And
say?
we see,
And
yeah,
If your
we
mind
see a
can
new,
believe
slaves,
we
it,
see a new world too. This
yeah.
is, yeah, this is,
you have to see
their
it.
time
Otherwise,
is up. I mean,
Hmm.
that time is up, and it's not going to be long. And I think that that's part of what all of this lashing out is. I mean, their days are numbered. And I think that
Yep.
we have to just keep the faith, continue to organize, and continue to believe. I mean, that the power is in the people. For me, that's the
That's it.
preaching of Pentecost. You know, Pentecost is the Holy Spirit was no longer just on some people, but
It
the
was on
Holy
every.
Spirit, in yes. And I say that, God inspired the Black Panthers because the God gave power to the people. We
Mhm.
have the power. And I think that that's what they're finding out in Minneapolis. That is a community that has come together. And I think that what you really have is you have some people with privilege who are trying to use their leverage and their privilege to help their neighbors. And it kind of explains why Renee
Mhm.
Good and Alex Pretty, as white people, became the victims. Because
Mhm.
they're literally out there with whistles and and organizing their neighbors to protect their more vulnerable neighbors. That really is what's going on in Minneapolis. And so, whereas the downside is that we're fighting this fascist government that has emerged, the upside is that it has empowered and energized people
Mhm.
to know what's at stake. And we were able to lend
And
our voices to that, and it was just a good investment in really grasping the national attention that this is at a breaking point now that we can make sure that our voices are heard this year.
and I think if we just stand strong and believe that we have the power, people have become anesthetized by the rhetoric. The media is not saying anything. Nobody's telling the truth, and so people didn't know how what was really happening. And some people thought, well, then it won't come to me because I have a job. I'm not on a SNAP. But
Mhm.
now they see it has nothing to do with your economic status. It has
Mm.
everything to do with who is at risk, who is being targeted. And even if you're working, Alex was working,
Mhm.
you can be targeted. Alex was a white boy, white man. You too can be targeted because it's not about certain people. It's you have to understand power concedes nothing without a
Mhm.
demand. And right now, people of faith will have to demonstrate that they really do believe. They really are not afraid to resist. And it's uncomfortable to resist. It's uncomfortable to help people when you see people being deported. It's uncomfortable to vote when you see people trying to take your voting rights away from you, demanding the voting polls. That's ridiculous. And it's illegal. But you have to know when they say they're trying to take your democracy, what they're trying to do is remove the rights of the people so that you don't have a right to have freedom of speech. You can't say what you want to do. And when I say that, all of these young people who are on social media all day and all night, they are trying to restrict that
Mhm.
ability to
Oh, absolutely.
vent on social media. Do know that that's the next wave of censorship.
Oh, it's
First,
here.
they
Yes.
took your books. They took your books. You can't read these banned books, which is
Mhm.
just insane. Next is going to be social media.
No, it's
You
here.
don't
I mean,
control. Yeah,
it,
we don't
there's
control you.
certain words, certain proper nouns
They will shut you
get
down.
get get you banned. I mean, and you're out
Yeah.
there. That's why everybody here, please give me a thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, because I was up to several million views a week, and I guess as they studied and Facebook will call you. Because they,
Yes.
you've got a lot of potential, a lot of traction, and we see you're strong here, here, and here. Then they shut me down. So
Mm-hmm.
what I need you to do, everybody, is to like and share, like and share, like and share. When you go to
Hmm.
rainbowpush.org, when you go to fair.org, when you go to Status Quo News and Drop Site News, what you need to do is like and share. So everybody, please like and share, like and share. We're going to continue this discussion in the next few minutes. Um, because what we're going to do is talk with Jim Narekas of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting about Georgia Fort and Don Lemon. And about this, we're going to speak with Rania Patrice and Jane Ruby about this tremendous win in Texas last night. What people are not talking about: Taylor Emmett, a machinist, a union man, won by 14 points in a deep red district. Why is that important? Because President Trump won it by 17 points just a little more than a year ago. That's a 31-point swing. It's not about the Democrats, it's about the person and the message. So most Americans, the plurality of Americans, the growing segment, don't identify with either party. Fine with me. Identify with the principle. You need to elect people who speak for you and speak to your issues. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to have to close things out here, but I'm excited that we're going to be going back to Minnesota. I'm going to reach out to Darrell Gray, Reverend Darrell Gray, Kevin Gray's brother, who is head of social action for the Progressive Baptists. There's some people now that we can reach out to them. They're heading down to Selma, but we can let them know you got a Viola Liuzzo and a Reverend James Reeb and Alex Pretty and Renee Good. And we still have Keith Porter. Don't forget his name, everybody. Keith Porter, a young man who was killed by an off-duty ICE officer because he was shooting a gun in the air on New Year's Eve. Everybody does that. Well, not everybody, but it's tradition. Think about that. So join me, everybody. Stay with me for the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show. Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. Get over there. Indeed, the largest stained glass renderings of the civil rights martyrs in the world are in that. It's a cathedral, and you need to be there. The Ma'afa Redemption Project, they are reaching our young people. They're doing such magnificent work, and he's moving into a new generation with his son, one of Time Magazine's 100 New Leaders for the Future. And of course, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, educator, lawyer, civil rights activist, pastor, mother, wife, professional pain for everybody who she feels is not doing the right thing. I love her. More of the Santita.
I really want to thank you for that last comment.
And my friend.
Well,
my brother.
She's my big sister, but she's also a nudge.
Okay.
But I love her. Yes, she is. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Much love.
Thank you.